I want to spend this last segment with a very long segment that we were working on for a little while, and it may break both of our hearts. We wanted to talk about our favorite or best movies of each decade. We want to do a little recap as we start 2023. Remember the great things, see what changes, see what happens, all these kind of deals. So we did our own little list. So we did the best movie and our favorite movie. I believe that's how we did this list.
I just picked two of what I considered to be the best. I didn't do my
Good
favorite.
enough. Good enough.
Although I will say I think it's kind of lame. You only went back to the 30s.
Yeah, I admit that the 10s and 20s are not my bag. I don't have enough experience with those to be able to do that. That's 100% on me. I have holes there, and so that's why you get to start us off with those.
All right, I'm going to start off with what I consider to be the best movie of the 1900s, 1900s. And I think it's hard to say this because we've lost like 90% of all silent films.
Right.
So it's tough. I'm going to say A Trip to the Moon. It has a scope that and technique that is still kind of impressive today. And considering it was made like literally at the beginning of cinema, that's kind of impressive. And not kind of, it's very impressive. Best of the 2010s, 1910s. This one was kind of tough. But in term, like I said, I was trying not to do personal favorites. And in terms of a movie that had a size and scope that other movies did not have and did things differently, like, inventing the close-up, you kind of have to go with Birth of a Nation.
And you're canceled.
Yeah, I know. Like it's not as problematic as Intolerance.
Right.
But
it's not great either.
It's not great, but you also can't like it.
We're talking about cinema. Like, yeah, I mean, you can't do that. You can't parse it with today's viewpoint. You have to see it from when it was, and the unbelievable way that they were able to create this movie. I mean, go back and actually just watch the movie for the technical aspects of it and all the things that they put together. Forget about the story. It's amazing that they could do that at that time.
Right. Yeah, it is.
So we're both canceled now.
Best movie of the 1920s. I'm going with Metropolis. It's a movie that is so loved,
except by me,
that they haven't really remade it. Of all the
is that what Coppola's doing now?
He's doing Megalopolis.
Oh, okay,
which I have no idea. I don't think anyone has any idea what this is about.
I don't think he has any idea what it is.
Right. Okay, so that takes us to the 30s.
Yeah.
What do you got?
So I'm going to get canceled again and want to start out with the 30s with a movie that I watched for the first time in 5th grade while we were in class, and is Gone with the Wind. I don't remember that first experience except waiting to day 3 when he said, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." And we all lost our minds because he said damn, and that was very exciting. Since then, I've watched it, and I still think it's a fantastic movie. I think, again, being able to put something like that together was amazing. To tell the story of the South at that time was what they were doing. They weren't trying to make a contemporary movie about that. So when you watch that movie now, understand that they understood that then too, but whatever's whatever.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm glad you put it on there, so I wasn't the one who had to pick it. But
yeah, you went soft on your side.
It was that movie is a production that never should have, kind of like the Lord of the Rings films. They never should have been able to get made just because the scope of it's kind of impossible,
insane.
But somehow they got it done. And then when you realize that like everything was shot on the studio, like there was no plantation really, like everything is studio. That, and you're like, wait, what? It's there's one shot, and it's such an innocuous little shot, where there's a chicken walking in the rain, and the camera
crossing the road,
and the camera is dollying in front of the chicken. Cameras at that time were like 5-6 feet wide. They were giant, and this was done with 3-strip Technicolor. Right, so your camera was actually shooting 3 separate reels of film, and the fact that they were able to move something of that size in a way that didn't terrify this chicken and
Right.
get this amazing looking shot. Because again, when these old cameras, you weren't looking like what you saw in your viewfinder wasn't what you were actually capturing. So there was a lot of
You call it
very
guesswork?
orchestrated guesswork.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it's like if you'd find your close up and then like dolly back to a wide shot, you could kind of get those, but the movement in between, that was something that was more guesswork, right?
Yep.
And the fact that they were able to make this movie like that, it confuses me. Like I don't know how they were able to do it. Like I consider the one that I have on my list for the 30s to be very much like Gone with the Wind, to where you could go either or with these, and mine is Wizard of Oz.
Yes. The film of the time, the magic of that movie still lasts to this day. It's amazing how they did that.
It's probably the most, when you talk about, what Hollywood movies mean, right? That's probably the one that you put up,
for sure.
I saw that in the theater with my oldest daughter when she was like 2. And we were at the Texas Theater, and I'd never seen it on the big screen before. And I felt like I was in a different place. And I'm like, oh, well, that's got to be like the first time people really felt like that, because I can't remember a movie doing it to this extent before.
Yeah, there have been moments before, like the great bank train robbery. I can't even talk today, when the train started coming and people freaked out because they thought the train was going to hit them.
Well, that was train arriving at the station. That was train arriving at the station.
Oh, sorry. Good job. Thank you for correcting me. But Wizard of Oz put the whole thing together. Like that, the whole entire film was that kind of magic. And
the movie, again, so beloved that like my daughter in the theater was singing along, and we're trying to get her to stop because we're at a screening, and I look around to people after, and I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. We were trying, and they're like, oh no, we loved it. It's like,
it's that kind of movie.
And that's the kind of movie it is, right? My second choice,
our second choices were both fucked up, so go ahead with yours.
Freaks.
Yes, that is.
I love Freaks.
On the New Beverly podcast. Gosh, I can't even think of it. What's the New Beverly podcast? Anyways, I'll think about that in a minute. They talk all the time about Freaks. That's one of their favorite movies. Just made one of their lists. I am very interested. I started the other day. Haven't finished it.
Perfect film. It is like 55 minutes long. How did you not finish it? It like barely constitutes a feature film.
Pure Cinema Podcast is the name of the podcast. And I don't know. I started the other day. I wasn't in the mood. I failed.
Okay.
100% I failed.
That I get. But there's a shot in that movie that because we watched this in our horror sci-fi class, and from the first time I watched this, the film, there's a shot, and I can't tell you what it is yet, but there's a shot that has stuck in my brain, and it is just the creepiest, most unsettling shot. But this movie takes you through every emotion, and make sure you watch the unedited version, because first of all, it was banned in America for quite a while.
So we move on to the 40s.
You didn't give yours.
Fritz Lang's M. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about it. It's a great film. The 40s is where we are going to begin to get into a fisticuffs, as it were. You can see what kind of films I like.
I went with the safest. I went with the safest answer possible.
You did, but yet still great. Two great films.
Okay. One of them is a safe one, and another one is one that makes sense to everyone who's seen it.
Who's ever seen it, right? Exactly. Yeah. So I went with The Postman Always Rings Twice and Shadow,
which is a great film. Great film.
Both of those are thrillers. Both of those are exactly the kind of film that I will watch till I die. I will probably watch those both again another 10 times. The nastiness that began with some of these films is just, that's what I love about movies. That's what I love about thrillers. That's what I love about these kind of films. So those are my two. To me, they're, one or two, and I can switch them back. Just depends on what day of the week it is.
I went with Citizen Kane for my first choice, because every time I think this movie's overrated, unlike you, every time I watch it, I realize, oh wow, no, this is that good. And it keeps getting better to me, and it keeps getting shorter, which to me really signifies a movie that I love, where the more I watch it, the shorter it feels. And I'm like, nah, I want more time with this.
And every time I watch it, I think, when am I going to shoot myself in the face and stop watching this movie?
I will never understand your hatred for this movie. I just don't get it.
No, I just think that there's so many things about that I just, great, it did something first. Well, you know what? Anybody else could have done something first. It just happened to be that way. And it's not like he was a mad genius and thought of some of these things. I don't believe that in any way, shape, or form. Anyways, go ahead, do your second one.
Except it's true.
It's not true. Anybody could have done that. There are 10 directors at that time that could have done exactly the same thing, put in that situation. I don't think he's a mad genius in that way. And I just don't.
I'm gonna
talk to me about the Ambersons movie. How did that go?
That wasn't necessarily his fault. I am going to quote a movie that you love.
Buffalo 66?
To prove you wrong.
The Brown Bunny?
If the Winklevosses could have created Facebook, they would have created Facebook. No, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. No one thought to shoot a movie in that way before. No one shot to really construct a movie in that way before. And just because other people could have, they didn't. He did it first. That does count. The other one is Best Years of Our Lives, which might, like, that one, I don't know if it's the best film I've ever seen, but I could probably make a case for it. And every time I watch that movie, it gets better and better and better. That movie is remarkable.
And for the people that know, no.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm keenly aware of what it is. That's one of those, we talk sometimes about movies that we hold that at one point in time I'm going to watch that and it's just going to fill me with joy and I'm going to be so happy, but I don't want to do that yet. Like Fanny and Alexander is another movie that I know that I'm just going to love, but I like to hold certain things. And that's definitely one of the ones that I'm holding on to because I look forward to watching it so very much. On to the 50s. I think that we probably basically could have interchanged most of these between.
You know what? We really could have, because I love those two that you chose.
Yeah.
Especially your second one.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yours on the 50s was A Place in the Sun and Night of the Hunter, and I went Sunset Boulevard and Facing the Crowd. All of those could be all-timers. Yeah. All those are all-timers.
Yeah. Well, Night of the Hunter is the one that kind of stands out to me simply because Charles Laughton basically made this incredible art film and then never did another one.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, I'm good.
That's all I need.
Yeah, like
I got the hand tattoos. That fulfills me.
Like, okay, Mitchum in that movie is just on another planet. He's so good.
Yeah.
And then my other one, A Place in the Sun. Man, that's a gut punch of a movie. That one kind of sort of not really based on a true story. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have. Yes.
Yeah,
that definitely should be on the list.
That movie is just Clift is, I think, a real tragic figure because he was in a car accident and really set him back. And I don't think he ever got to where he should have been. Like, he should have been exalted as one of the best actors of his age. And for the people that know, kind of consider him that, you know, but he's not, he's not a James Dean where like everybody knows the name.
Should have died young. That's the way you do it. Hopefully
he kind of did. He died in his, like, he was 50, I think.
Well, 27. That's the time to do it. Yeah. If anybody out there in the listening land hasn't seen Sunset Boulevard, well, that's on you. I'm not going to talk about that, but I just want to give a quick shout out to Facing the Crowd. First film by Andy Griffith. It is all that you need to know about politics and people within that sphere. It works as well today as it
and not just politics, media manipulation.
Sure, absolutely.
And the idea that people will follow anyone if they smile.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're suckers, and that hasn't changed.
It's terrifying. It's okay. So you might find this funny. The night that, the day that Trump was, when they called the election for Trump in 2016, The movie that played that night was A Face in the Crowd on IFC.
Nice.
That I was flipping around. I'm like, okay, I can't take news anymore. And I'm like, A Face in the Crowd. It's like, okay, well, that's hilarious. That's someone making a point with their programming.
I would say so. On to the 60s. Oh, you know what? We got to talk at some point in time now that we're out of the 50s. Was the 50s the best decade for movies? Was it the 70s? When was it? Do you have a declaration?
70s.
Okay, so we'll get to the 70s. Okay, so the 60s is when I introduced the greatest movie of all time, as far as I'm concerned. That is going to be Andre Rublev. And then I also gave you the movie that changed cinema in 1967 with Bonnie and Clyde.
I can't argue with those. I'm putting up probably the most obscure movie on any of my lists. But again, anyone who's seen it will agree. I Am Cuba, which changed narrative and documentary films. Like, I mean, there's stuff in it. Again, the famous funeral procession,
right?
Where you watch it and you're like, how in the hell did they accomplish this? And then another movie that gives you the same how in the hell they accomplished this, but in a completely different way, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is a movie that when people say they don't like it, I understand. But
have they seen it in the cinema? And I don't know if there's one movie more than that movie that you have to see in the movie theater. You just, it's just not the same otherwise.
So like almost the entire movie shot with 14 to 24 millimeter lenses, right? It's shot really wide. And it's shot 70 millimeter, this great big scope. But for most of it, you're looking at characters almost like real size. Right?
Sure.
And I saw this front row center at Norris Theater at SC, brand new 70 millimeter print. And the movie was gorgeous. And then you get to the Stargate sequence. The lights start streaking by and you're kind of transported. And until that point, you have one close up of Bowen, right? And that's the closest, or that's his name, right? Bowen.
Yeah.
And that's the closest you get until it cuts to this extreme close up of the eye blinking, and all you can see is the eye. And you've basically gone from watching people who look like they're, actual height to 70 millimeter frame on something that's 1.5 inches wide in real life. And when that happened in the theater, my heart stopped for a beat and I couldn't breathe, and I felt like I could see through time. Like,
beautiful.
It was the most incredible experience I've had in a movie theater. And
I love the experience for you, because my experience was exact opposite, yet as amazing. I was the last row at midnight movies, Inwood Theater, watching that behind a pole. I had a pole in my vision the whole entire time I watched that movie, and yet I was mesmerized, and I was in from the very first moments. And then when the star sequence hit, it's like 2:30 in the morning. My mind melted. Absolutely. Like I felt it dripping out of my ears a little bit. So
this is how important of a scene that is. The next day at 8 a.m., I had a sound class, and our professor was like, today we're just going to watch a movie and talk about the sound. And he wheeled in this 20-inch TV with a Laserdisc player, and it was 2001. And while he was getting stuff set up, I went over to him. I was like, hey, they showed this in the sci-fi class last night, and we watched it on 70 millimeter, and I was first row. And he turned to me and he goes, get out of here right now. He's like, you don't want to ruin your experience with this.
Right.
He's like, okay, I know you've seen it. You get it. He was like, oh, you had that experience. Yeah. Don't tarnish it. Don't tarnish it,
baby. I miss some Laserdisc. On to the greatest decade in cinema history.
This was the toughest. What do you pick? There's so many movies where you're like, well, this changed everything.
Yep.
Do you choose the two Godfather films, right? Do you choose Deer Hunter? Do you choose Star Wars? You know, like
And we chose none of those.
None of them.
On my side, I did All the President's Men and The Holy Mountain. On
First of all,
yes,
I love The Holy Mountain, but
yes.
of all the movies in the 70s, fuck you a little bit for that one, because
to me,
it's such a you pick.
It is. It's the one pick on here that's very much of me. But for me, the 70s was that dirty underground midnight kind of movie. Those are my favorites. Those I adore so much. And that's what The Holy Mountain is. And that represented so much of that. You could have given me Pink Flamingos. That would have been fine as an underground movie. But Holy Mountain just kind of
Rocky Horror,
of course. But I mean, John Lennon was a freaking producer on that movie. Like, it just brought in so many different things, and the visualization on that is just that's why The Holy Mountain made my list.
Do you think one of the things that I really like about Holy Mountain is that it makes weird movies a little more accessible to people?
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
As long as you can accept the fact that some dude turns his shit into solid gold, then you can ride with that movie.
Yeah.
That's the part that I've seen the most people walk out on. Talk to me about Superman the movie. You've talked about it before as being one of your favorites, if not the favorite. Is like, let people understand in the 70s, way before Marvel, way before all this other stuff was going on, the impact of that first Superman movie.
This is technically the second superhero movie. The first one was Batman the movie, the Adam West one.
Sure.
This movie was filmed on, they had 13 units filming on 6 continents.
Unbelievable.
They had think about this.
And then again, so people really get that.
Yeah. 6 continents, everything but Antarctica, because you're not allowed to go there. 13 units. The flying effects took over a year to do. And here's the thing. They were making 2 movies at once also, which is something that is insane. And the crazier thing, apparently they only, for both movies, the first 2 movies, everything with Hackman was shot in like 3 weeks, which is insane, because that's no time for 2 full movies worth of stuff.
Right, sure.
Richard Donner was working like 22-hour days. But first of all, it's one of the most beautiful looking movies I've ever seen. Like, the cinematography on this is impeccable. And then they're able to match stuff of like, oh, we're going to shoot this shot of Christopher Reeve on set here in Southern California. And then we're going to match it to a plate that another unit shot, where we have to then film him a year and a half from now, you know, in the shot afterwards. So like, it starts with him going like that and then cuts to a shot looking down, and that's a process shot. So that's going to be done a year later. Everything's got to match. And it's crazy that it works. It's one of these movies that kind of like Gone with the Wind shouldn't have happened, shouldn't have worked, but it did. And for that alone, I gave it, because for me, you had to have one of 3 movies on this list: either Jaws,
definitely
Star Wars, or this.
Yep.
And where I think this outshines the other 2 is just the scope of the production. The scope of the production on this, I don't know how he came out of it not crazy.
Oh, right.
I don't know how he made a movie that, if adjusted for inflation, made like $1.5 billion.
He was the James Cameron of his day.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah. Let's move on to the birth of our decade, the decade of our birth. How about I say it that way? The 80s. The 80s was the time that we became boys. We were still just boys then. So we got a couple of them that doesn't have anything to do with boys at all. I went Raging Bull and The Vanishing. And you went Raging Bull, Back to the Future. Talk to me.
Raging Bull might be the most safe critical of this, because every time you see a list of like best movies of the 80s, that one's always on there. To me, it feels like a hangover from the 70s, you know?
Yep, that's why I love it.
Yeah. So I went with something that I thought encapsulated the 80s a little bit more, right? That said something a little bit more about the decade, which is why I went with Back to the Future, because Back to the Future is probably the most beloved movie of all time, next to, like, it's up there, like, the last 40 years at least. It like you're not going to find anyone who just hates Back to the Future. It just
Right.
doesn't happen. And then I went with Blade Runner just because it invented a genre.
It did.
And my only issue with it is that it's a bit slow, but in terms of what it does with the visuals and the music, like there's nothing better.
And sticking with my thriller thing, maybe the greatest thriller of all time, The Vanishing.
Yeah.
It is horrifying, beautiful, sad, awful, just like every emotion that you can go into. It was redone. The remake was okay, but the original is the one that really is going to kick you in the nuts. So,
the 80s, this was a tough one because there are a lot we could have chosen. Like, wasn't
bazillion?
Yeah, didn't Paris, Texas come out in the 80s? Like,
it did.
Yeah,
Repo Man.
Repo Man. Yeah. There.
The History of Western Civilization came out that decade. The documentary.
Raising Arizona. Evil Dead 2. You know, I mean, there's
list could go on.
Everything that Spielberg did in the 80s. Everything Spielberg did alone in the 80s.
No disrespect.
Yeah.
No disrespect. The 90s were when we were starting to become men, I would say. I don't know if I was a man quite in the 90s, but I was almost there.
I'm okay with all of these four. Yeah. Every single one of these I'm very happy with.
I started early in the decade with Fargo, and I ended the decade late with Eyes Wide Shut.
Fargo's 96.
Early, okay.
No, that's late.
I didn't go like. Well, I could have gone super early. That's
you didn't say pump up the jam.
Pump up the jams. Yeah, I would not have said that one.
You didn't say House Party too,
bro. We didn't get to talk about House Party today, but I've got some cannons about that. But to end my decade with Eyes Wide Shut in the theater in Carrollton, and me and my friend just sat in the parking lot for 30 minutes afterwards and goes, "What in the fuck just happened?" That's why it makes my list. Just everything, and it becomes better as I go along. Understanding that's a comedy has just changed my perspective on that movie in a wholly different way, and I love to watch it as a comedy.
My wife, my wife loves this movie, and a few years ago we were watching it, and I was giving like what I thought everything meant, and then she said, "Well, it's blah," and she said what the movie meant, and I just went, "Oh,
yep,
oh," and it's like. Her reading of the movie is the only way it makes sense. It's the only way any of the questionable stuff makes sense. And then in questionable, I mean stuff like certain performances.
Sure.
Right? We're like, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
But then also when you take a look at some of the changes that were made from the novella, it makes everything make sense. Yep. So I went with The Disorderlies. No, I went with Pulp Fiction, which, for better or worse, I think changed everything in movies.
I think for better. I would argue for better. I mean,
there's a 1-2
happy to live in the world where Pulp Fiction exists rather than it didn't.
No. What I mean is there was a 1-2 punch of Clerks in this, where you had filmmakers writing whole scenes about like the whole Royale with cheese,
sure,
right? About pop culture, and that's been really bad for things. But I'd rather live in that world than a world where Pulp Fiction didn't exist, because I love Pulp Fiction, and even though I don't think it's the best thing Quentin Tarantino ever did, it's probably the most Tarantino-y, and it's the one that's going to be on his tombstone.
Which fake Pulp Fiction movie was the worst? Because I've got an answer.
Oh,
I know it's a tough one. I put you on the spot there.
There are a bunch. I might.
If you say 2 Days in the Valley, we're fighting.
No, I love 2 Days in the Valley.
Okay, clear. The correct answer is Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. God, that was a terrible movie.
I was going to say maybe Boondock Saints.
Or Boondock Saints. Each equally terrible.
Boondock Saints is a movie that
damn, I hate that movie.
If a 16-year-old says that they love Boondock Saints, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. My second choice is Saving Private Ryan.
Easy.
Because it's probably his best movie, or second best. All right.
Fuck off if you can watch that opening scene and not be moved. Not the one with the old man. I'm talking about the action sequence.
Yeah.
All right. Into the 2000s as we count our way down. You know what? at the beginning of the 2000s. I certainly would not have suggested that In the Mood for Love would be on my list. But then I've watched it twice in the last 2-3 years, and I go, oh, I understand why that movie is like top 25 all time on some people's list. It was just fantastic. And of course, I'm going to go No Country for Old Men because I need men stuff in my life.
Well, No Country for Old Men is a great film. And unfortunately, as much as I love it, it shouldn't have won all of the Oscars against my number one pick.
There Will Be Blood.
Which, honestly, the more I watch it and the more I think about it, the more I'm starting to think to myself, it might be the best American film ever made. Like, I love every frame of it. It says Daniel Plainview, I think, really represents everything that's wrong with our country.
Yeah. Everything that people aspire to be, for sure.
Where it's like, he kind of is a family man. He really does love his son.
Right.
Until the moment he gets in the way of his profits.
Sure.
And becomes a competitor, and then he is absolute trash to him.
Bastard in a basket.
Bastard in a basket.
Mm-hmm.
And then my second one is Children of Men, because I honestly think it's the best sci-fi film in since 2000.
Yeah, people out there better know that that's a Matt Men movie's favorite. That's our stamp of approval right there on Children of Men.
Also real quick, Children of Men, considering how fertility rates have dropped like 47% in men in the last 30 years, getting kind of scary.
Yeah.
Getting kind of scary.
I hope that the vaccine killed all my sperm. That's my dream. On to the last decade, which doesn't even really count, since I feel like you need at least a decade to reflect on movies, but we're going to do it anyhow.
Well, considering that we both picked one of the same picks,
yes,
I think we already know what the best movie of the whole decade is.
I think it's going to be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That movie is just, as we've said before, our warm blanket. There's never a time where I can't turn to that movie. Sometimes I'll think, oh, well, maybe I'll just skip the Margot Robbie stuff where she's going to watch the movie and everything. And then I watch the whole damn sequence. Yeah. And then I'm on to Spawn Ranch. And I'm like, maybe I won't. And then I go,
it's one of those that if it's on, that's it. Yeah. It's just on the rest of the day. Your other one is Uncut Gems, which I love.
Oh boy, the ride on that one. It was just the intensity of that. You know what? I've only seen it the once. I saw it Christmas Day when it first opened, and I loved that experience so much. I'm just holding on to it, and I don't want to ruin it with the second viewing.
I think that's the smart thing to do. Yeah. I don't know, because you saw it in the theater, right?
Yes, indeed.
I don't know if it's going to feel as tense and be as effective to you at home.
I don't think so either. Yeah, first viewing and then with the people. Yeah, sometimes it's just perfect that way.
And my other is Mad Max Fury Road. I love every frame of this. It is, I think, probably the best action movie ever made. It is a master who invented a subgenre, coming back and showing kids how it's done and using every tool, in the chest to get the job done. And I love it.
I sit right next to you in the theater. And I thought, it's all right.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Well, you'd have felt the same way when we were watching the Brown Bunny together if we would have. That, my friends, is the decades. I think that we had some delicious choices. I think they were all perfect in every way, shape, or form. And you cannot deny that we were accurate 100% of the time. We have made it to the end of this episode. Season 6 has begun, and we did it perfect today. Episode 1 is in the books, but before we leave everybody, we want to give you a little something to be entertained by until we see you next. So, Matt, let's start with you. What do you want to give the people to watch while they are doing their thing this week?
There is a new horror film out right now called Skinamarink.
Yes.
It's I think more about how it makes you feel than what happens. But it's definitely effective to a lot of people because the thing was made for nothing, like 15, 20 grand. And it's made over $1 million.
Not shabby.
If you hate it, I get it. I don't know how I feel about it. It's effective for what it wants to do, but I think it's something that everyone should try to watch and try to get through. And And also, if you have Tubi, watch Blue Moon because it helps me recover some money.
Blue Moon, baby, Blue Moon. Before I give mine, I want to say again, this is season 6. We're very excited that you're with us for another season. We're trying to do a little upgrade. I got my fancy lights going on back here.
Don't.
There's a little under construction sign because there will be more coming. I did kind of bust this on Matt, so it's not his fault, but we'll just kind of be doing more video content, more ideas, trying to expand the Matt Men Movies universe this year. So that's the plan. But to stay consistent with my history for Matt Men Movies, it's January. So why am I not going to give you a January release movie?
Ooh.
So I give you Gerard Butler in Plane. Oh my goodness, what a wonderfully bad, great movie this was. I had so much fun watching Plane. It is your perfect January action film to watch. I say do it however you can. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, Gerard Butler, for always coming through on January. January releases are the best.
Yeah, about to say, can I give a Gerard Butler January release?
Please.
Let's go with Geostorm.
Classic.
Yeah, I think it's on Prime. I think that's where it is. But if you like some cheese, that's cheesy. I love it.
I left this part for the end of the segment because hopefully LeBron James doesn't listen too deep into the podcast. If you're still listening, LeBron, can you please turn this off? Because I'm about to give you some hate right now. House Party was terrible. I can't believe they did this. It was supposed to be a comedy, but there were no jokes in that movie. I don't understand how you write a comedy with no jokes. It was very disrespectful to the original because the original was average and kind of funny. This was not average. It was not kind of funny. I'm very disappointed. Donald Glover's brother, I won't even say his name right now because, first of all, I can't think of it because I'm dumb. But second of all, he worked on all those Atlanta shows, and that's what you bring with House Party. Such a disappointment. I was sad this week, but that's okay because we're finishing the episode now. Matt, anything left to say?
Yeah.